Om Shri Sai Ram. Today I am telling a story not about Lord Shri Rama because we have heard a lot about him, both in Ramayana and in Ramcharitmanas. So that story we'll save for some other day. Today I want to tell you a story about the ancestors of Rama, about the Kings of Ayodhya. And the reason for that is that whenever God takes avatar on earth, whenever God descends on earth in human form, what kind of a family do you think God chooses to come into? What would be the qualities of the family in which God would be born? From all the stories that we have read in the Puranas, in the Mahabharata, and in the Ramayana, we find that God always chooses a very virtuous family. That is the most important thing, the quality that attracts God, love and virtues. These two things. Only these can entice Lord Narayan to come down in human form. So why was Lord Rama born as a king of Ayodhya? Why? Let's find out the reason. So long ago, a very, very long time ago, in the imperial solar dynasty, there was a mighty king named Ikshvaku. At that time, there used to be two dynasties which were super strong and very powerful. They were the solar dynasty and the lunar dynasty. That is, the dynasty of the sun and the lineage of the moon. That is how all the Kshatriya kings, they trace their lineage, either to the sun or to the moon. So the house of the sun, the solar dynasty, it had a number of warriors, a number of great kings in it. The most famous of them being King Ikshvaku. And all of the other kings of Ayodhya, they are known as the descendants of Ikshvaku. So in the Kul of Ikshvaku was born a very mighty ruler, very strong, brave and powerful ruler named King Khatwang. King Khatwang was everything one could desire from a king. He was perfect, he was powerful, he was kind, he was considerate. And he had a son, the one and only Dilip. The Prince Dilip was a very handsome, charming, intelligent, strong and compassionate young man. He had got all the virtues from his father. His father had made sure that apart from receiving every other education, Dilip must also be a good human being, because he knew fully well that unless you are a good human being, you cannot be a good king. And so, King Khatwan made sure that Dilip, as a prince, had to go out among the people, among the common people, meet them, talk to them, find out how their life was. Could anything be done to make their lives better? What could the king do? So all these things Dilip had been doing from a very young age, and the king Khatwang was very proud of his son. There was no one like Dilip. He was quite extraordinary. He also had a great reverence for all the rishis, the munis, and the scholars, and he was like picture perfect, that could be said of him. Now, this Dilip, he was unmarried, and King Khatwang was desperately finding a suitable bride for him, but nobody could match up to his son's perfection. It took a very long time, but ultimately, Khatwang was very satisfied, very pleased when he heard about the princess of Magad. She was Sudakshina. Sudakshina was very intelligent, beautiful, and virtuous. She was as virtuous as she was beautiful. She got married to Dilip. Dilip and Sudakshina made a very happy pair. They were blissfully happy together. Sudakshina adored her lord. She revered him and served him and loved him as if he were her own breath. That was her dedication and devotion and love to him. Dilip was blissfully happy. King Khatwang was also very happy to see his son and daughter-in-law together. And like this, a long time passed. King Khatwang managed to instill all the good principles in Dilip, and then finally finding the time suitable for him to go into the forest and begin his Vanprasthashram and Sannyas ashram, he asked his guru that now the coronation of Dilip should be done, that time has come and it is time for me to leave. So, King Khatwang arranged the coronation. Dilip ascended to the throne along with his queen Sudakshina, and his father went off in the forest. to spend the rest of his days immersed in God. Now Dilip was the emperor of Ayodhya. And don't think that Ayodhya was at that time the small city that it is now. Ayodhya was a huge country. Its borders expanded from one part of the ocean to the other, from east to west, from north to south. It was like a huge continent, you can imagine. It was that huge a country, Ayodhya. And it was managed superbly by Dilip. Because not only was he was a very brave warrior, he was also a good statesman, he was a good administrator, and he was very kind and compassionate to his people. Their welfare was number one priority on his mind. That was the kind of family the kings of Ayodhya were, very conscious of their duties and doing them perfectly. So Dilip and Sudakshina spent a very happy time together looking after the people, doing their stately duties and doing whatever was expected of them as a king and queen, and things were fine up to a point. But then slowly, very slowly, the king's face began losing its charm. It began losing the effulgence that was there. This bothered Sudakshina, but she did not say anything, but she was concerned. Why does the king look so anxious? Why does his face look so drawn? This is not like him. He is a lion amongst men. So why does he then give in to depression? This is not like him. However, she did not say a word to him and just waited patiently for him to come to her and talk to her. And soon enough, one day, King Dilip came to his queen. And that day he told her, "Something is bothering me, Sudakshina. I can't get it out of my mind." Sudakshina asked, what can it be, my lord? What can bother you? Everything is fine in the city. People are happy. Everything is fine. Why are you so sad? So then the king said, "The reason for my anxiety is this, Sudakshina. I feel that knowingly or unknowingly I have committed a sin. I must have committed a sin. I have done something. I'm sure of that. I just don't know what. What is it I have done?" So Dakshina asked, "What do you mean?" And the king said, "Well, we don't have a child. We are still childless after so many years of marriage. And this makes me think that there must be something, some sin that I must have committed. Otherwise, why would God deny me a son? And it makes me very sad that the mighty line of Ikshvaku is going to end with me, that I am going to be the last king in the Ikshvaku line. It should not have been so." So Dakshina was also very sad when she heard this, and she said, "My lord, I have also been troubled with the same thoughts for a very long time, but I didn't want to bother you with my worries when you're already so concerned about all the people and the kingdom and their welfare and their prosperity. So I thought that I should not communicate to you what I feel in my heart regarding the fact that we have no child." At that King Dilip said, "My dear, I think it's time to go and meet our preceptor. It's time to go and meet our Guru Vashisht in his ashram. Let us go there together, as man and wife, not as the king and queen of Ayodhya. Let's just the two of us go there and meet him. Maybe he will find a solution for our troubles." The queen gladly agreed, for she was also longing for a child. And that day the king went to the ashram of Guru Vashisht in the forest. He did not take anyone with him. He did not take his ministers. He did not take his generals. He did not take his foot soldiers. He did not even take the retinue of the cavalry, the horses, and the elephants that usually accompany the king whenever he goes for a hunt in the forest, or in fact he goes anywhere. Instead, King Dilip just took his own chariot and his queen, and he was himself driving the chariot. He was the charioteer also. He went with his queen and they went to the forest. As soon as the little children in the forest saw the king and queen, they reported to their parents happily, "The king and queen are coming and they are coming alone." And so news reached Rishi Vashisht in his ashram that the king and queen were coming, and he got ready to receive them. Now, Dilip and Sudakshina went up to Vasisht's ashram. When they got down, they offered their pranam to their guru, and as soon as Vasisht's wife Arundhati came out, they offered pranam to her also. Then Arundhati took Sudakshina inside the ashram to her own room, where they chatted pleasantly. Meanwhile, the king accompanied Rishi Vasisht. Now the news had been, like it had gone all around the forest, and all the ashrams and all the rishis and munis were aware that the king had come. And most of them, they came out, those who were not deep in tapas, they all came to meet the king. Because everyone loves to meet him, to look at him, to talk with him. It's a great opportunity. Nobody wanted to lose this opportunity. And so Vasisht's ashram was full with all these people. Now the king had come with a personal problem. But he did not speak to Rishi Vasisht of it immediately. Instead, he asked the Rishi, "Sir, how are you? Please tell me, are you well? Is everything all right in the ashram? Are all the sacrifices, all the yajnas, all the yagas being conducted regularly, smoothly, without any issues? Are there any obstacles in your worship? Can I do anything to make things even better? Please let me know if I can serve you in any better way." That I am doing as of now. Vasisht assured the king that everything was fine with the forest dwellers, with his ashram, and that they lacked nothing. Everything was in plenty. The king's rule was just. He was happy when he heard this, Dilip, but still he did not say anything to Vasisht. Now, when everybody, they had all spoken with the king and everyone was happy, then Vasisht made them all to leave. And then they all went. Finally, when they were alone, then Vasisht called out for Queen Sudakshina. She also came, and then she and the king sat in front of Guru Vasisht. Guru Vasisht was sitting on his gandhi where he sat, and the king was sitting in Padmasan in front of the Guru at a little lower stature, as befits a king, to be in front of his preceptor, a little low. So Dakshina sat next to her husband. Then, with folded hands, the king asked his Guru, "Gurudev, I am very troubled because of the lack of a son. I really need a son to continue this mighty line of Ikshvaku, and I don't know what I have done. Why am I being punished like this? Why don't I have a son? With your grace, Gurudev, I am sure I will be able to get a son. So I beg you, Gurudev, please bless me. Please pour your grace on me so that I may have a son." At this, Vasisht closed his eyes, and then he sat in silence for some time. He was meditating on what the king had said. The king also sat quietly in Padmasan and closed his eyes in the lotus pose he was sitting. And the queen also sat next to the king with her mind intent on God. Like this they sat for some time. It was pin-drop silence. Then finally Vasisht opened his eyes. He looked at the king and said, "My dear King Dilip, there is indeed a problem here. There are some things which even a Guru's grace cannot overcome. I cannot give you a son out of my own grace, though I long to do so. Because, unknowingly, you have committed a sin, and because of that, there is a curse on you. Until this curse is lifted, you cannot have a son." Now King Dilip was stumped, and he said, "But what did I do? What sin did I commit?" So then Guru Vasisht said, "When you were newly married, it was a long time ago, King Dilip, when you and Rani Sudakshina were just newly married, and you were so blissfully happy together, just involved with each other. You had eyes for nothing else. And you were in your chariot, and you were rushing in the chariot with your queen. You were completely unaware of everything. You were that happy. And little did you know that a little distance away in the forest there sat the divine cow Kamdhenu. Now, Kamadhenu means the wish-fulfilling cow, because Kama means desire, Dhenu means cow. So Kamadhenu is the divine cow who is the wish-fulfilling one. She has the capacity to bless anyone with anything that they want. She is that powerful. And that Kamadhenu, she was sitting there in the forest and she saw you. When she saw you, she was very pleased, and she thought, "Oh, I see, the mighty and strong prince of Ayodhya is coming with his new bride to come and meet me, to offer his pranams to me. I would love to give him a blessing, a very good one. I think I'll give him a very bright son, a bright and beautiful son, the best that one can imagine. Now, Kamadhenu is the one who fulfills people's desires, whatever they ask, but when she desires to give something, it is something extraordinary, beyond anybody's belief or imagination. And that was what she had thought for you, that she will bless you with. But when you passed her, you just glanced at her, but it didn't register in your mind that this is Kamdhenu and you should stop and offer her your pranam. Instead, you just went on, and there was just this dust, flowing up in her face, and she was very disturbed. And she thought that what is this? I had heard that this prince was very righteous, that he was a savior of dharma, that he always walked on the path of dharma, that he always looks after his people. But this prince does not seem to be that. He's so arrogant. He did not even stop here. He did not even want to talk to me when I am standing here ready to bless him. No, this won't do. If the king is like that, the people will be worse, because people always follow the king. Whatever the kings do, the people also do. So a king has to be of a good and noble character for the people also to be good. Now, I am afraid that if this king is disrespecting cows, he might disrespect the Vedas, and the entire Vedic structure can crumble. The dharma, the pillars of the dharma on which it stands, they might crumble. That will not do. So this king shall not have a son. And so she cursed you, that you will never have a son. But then she also added, but you will have one the day you go and meet your guru and ask him for a cure, how to get out of this curse. And it will be a very tough practice. You will not get a son that easily. You will have to work hard for it, you arrogant king. Now go on your way. And so saying, she had gone. But you never knew. You never knew that a curse had been placed upon you. So such things happen even to good people who are not harming anybody, who are just doing good things and trying to be good. Sometimes bad things happen to them because they may hurt someone unintentionally. They may commit some wrong unknowingly. And this was what had happened with Dilip. He had been completely unaware of what had transpired. So now the Guru Vashisht said, if you want a child, Dilip, you and your wife, you have to take a Dhenu Vrat. A Dhenu Vrat means a cow fast. You have to take a vow to worship the cow and to serve her to the best of your ability. Are you ready to do so? Can you do it? And the king said, Gurudev, your order I will follow implicitly. Your command is my wish. Whatever you say, I will do. I want this curse to be lifted. So then the Gurudev said, it's not that easy. Don't think it's going to be easy for you, O king. You cannot go back to Ayodhya. You cannot be a king while you do this Dhenu Vrat. You will have to live here in this ashram with your queen. And I have here living with me Nandini. Nandini is the daughter of the cow Kamdhenu. She is in every aspect equal of her mother. Now, if you can start serving Nandini, she might be happy, and then the curse might be lifted. But it's going to be hard work, because you will have to live here like we do, like very simple folks. You will have to sleep on the ground, you will have to eat the simple food that all the ashramvasis eat, and you will have to serve the cow from morning till night. You have to make sure that she is clean, that she has good food to eat, that there is clean water, and that she is happy in general, that nothing is bothering her. And you also have to ensure that she is safe, she is protected, and that no harm comes to her. If you are able to do all this, it will work in your favor. The king looked at Sudakshina, and Guru Vashisht also asked her, what do you think, Queen Sudakshina? Can you do it? And she said, of course, I can do anything if this will make my lord happy and lift the curse. And so from that day on, the king and queen, they lived like common people at Guru Vashisht's ashram. The king sent the message to his ministers that he would be staying on in the ashram for some time and that they had better look after the affairs of the kingdom for the time being, till the king came back. So the ministers took charge of the kingdom, while the king and the queen, they started serving Nandini. And it was tough work. It wasn't easy. Every morning, very early in the morning, both of them got up. They bathed in the cold water of the river, and then Queen Nandini would go and fetch some beautiful fresh flowers. She would weave a garland out of that for Nandini. When Nandini woke up, the king would take her out. The queen would garland the cow. They would offer her worship with the arati, with the lamp, and then the queen would place a tilak on the cow's forehead. Then, after offering pranam to her, she would let the cow go with the king to the forest. The king took the cow to the forest, and they stayed there for the whole day while she walked and munched on the grass, on the fresh green grass wherever she found. She would go, and the king quietly followed her, with his bow and arrow safe on his shoulder, watching out for any danger. But everything was all right. It was a very peaceful forest. It was only that Nandini liked to walk very much. She used to walk very far, here and there, and the whole day the king had to walk. It was exhausting, but the king persevered. In the evening, when she came back, again she had to be cleaned, she had to be massaged, then the fresh water had to be filled for her. In the meantime, the queen had cleaned out the barn so that everything was hunky dory for Nandini. And this was how they lived for quite some time. And then one day, when the king and Nandini had gone in the forest, that day Nandini ventured out very far, much, much further than she had on any other day. And on this day, Nandini went ahead a little quickly, and the king was left behind. And he was trying to reach up to her when suddenly he heard a roar. It was the roar of a lion. And then he heard a very piteous cry from Nandini. The king was very alarmed. What was happening? He rushed. There was a clearing in the forest. There were trees all around, but there was a clear area in the middle, and there he saw Nandini on the ground. She was looking at him piteously with her huge eyes, with fear in them, and the danger lurking because there was a lion on top of her. And this lion had every intention of finishing her. He was going to kill her. Nandini was looking very frightened. The king told the lion, "Get off her right now, or I will cut you in two pieces with my arrows. My arrows are very mighty. Don't doubt my word." The lion surprisingly replied in a human voice, "O King Dilip, everyone are your people. You are the king of the land, so everyone is your subject. I am also one of your subjects. So what if I am a lion? I am also your subject, and I live in the forest. Is it not your duty to look after me? I have to appease my hunger. It is not a sin for me to kill this cow, because we do eat cows. The lions are allowed, and she is my natural prey. So let me eat her. What is the problem? Why are you stopping me?" The king said, "What you are saying is true, that you can eat all animals as you wish to appease your hunger, but this cow is under my protection, so you cannot kill her. I will not allow you to do so. Get off her, or I will kill you." Then the lion said, "I don't think this is fair, O king. Everywhere they say that in Dilip's kingdom the people have it all. All the subjects are very happy because King Dilip looks after all of them. Then what about me? Why aren't you watching out for me? Why aren't you looking out for me? I am hungry. I need to eat. If I give up this cow, what shall I eat? Tell me. You have to give me something in return. If I let this cow go, all this time, Nandini was on the ground looking very panicked, frightened, scared, and her eyes piteously looked at the king, at this problem that she was facing. And the king Dilip was very perturbed. But then he said calmly, "What you say, O lion, is true. Since I am the king and you are my subject, it is my duty to look after you. So, I tell you, let's do this. You get off this cow, let her go, for she is my responsibility. Instead, I offer my own body to you. You can eat me and appease your hunger." The lion said, "So be it. If that's what you wish, I am ready." The king said, "All right." And so the king sat down on the ground. And when the king sat down on the ground, the lion let go of the cow. The king closed his eyes and waited for the lion to pounce on him and for it all to be over. But instead of that, he suddenly heard a very sweet voice. It was a sweet voice of a young girl. And the sweet voice said, "Get up, O king. I am very happy with you." He opened his eyes only to see Nandini smiling, standing in front of him. She looked hale and hearty, safe and sound. There was no scratch on her body from the lion's claws, which earlier he could see while she was on the ground. And there was no lion either. And the king exclaimed, "What is this? Where has the lion gone?" Nandini smiled and said, "Don't worry, O king. I was just testing you. I am too mighty for a mere lion to affect me. I can roam anywhere in these forests, go wherever I want. No danger will befall me. It is because of my own strength also, as I am my mother's daughter, but also because of the penance of the Rishi Vasisht. His tapobal keeps me safe. His power is so strong that nothing can ever harm me. But I wanted to test you. How strong was your resolve to look after me? And you have passed the test. And so, king, I am very happy with you, and now I will bless you. You will have a brilliant son. He will shine like a diamond. He will be a king among men. And why should he not? Because, O king, your line is so pure, your family line is so good, that when Lord Narayan himself is going to take birth in your family, why should we obstruct the birth of your son? So you are going to have a very good son. So saying, Nandini blessed him, and then blissfully the king and Nandini walked back together to the hermitage. There was no need for King Vashish to ask the king, because the glow on his face said it all. The king and queen were very happy. They offered their pranam to Vasisht and Arundhati, and they went back to Ayodhya. Now that Kamdhenu's curse was lifted and Nandini was happy, King Dilip and Sudakshina were in a very happy state of mind, and they were very expectant. And soon enough, the whole country heard the news that the queen was expecting a child. Everyone was so delighted. There were so many celebrations because the king was adored by the people. Because the king Dilip had loved his people, he had always been concerned about their welfare and their prosperity. They were like family to him. So the people also cared for their king in the same way. And they were delighted that finally the hardships were over and the royal couple were going to have a royal heir. And then after 10 months, Queen Sudakshina gave birth to a brilliant child. The child was so beautiful. Whoever met him fell in love with him. After 10 days, the king invited the preceptor to come and do the naming ceremony, the Namkaran Sanskar. And for the naming ceremony, Guru Vashisht came, and he named the child Raghu, based on the nakshatra in which he was born. Now this Raghu, he was a very pretty, a very charming boy. And as he grew up, he was like a universal favorite with everyone. Everyone loved Raghu, even when he was child and even when he grew up. It was like people could not love him enough. Now, King Dilip was doing all his duties as a king perfectly. He was saving his kingdom from all the invaders who love to invade countries, who come from far across in ships and boats and try to attack the borders of the country. But the King Dilip made sure that the borders were all protected, the people in the border villages were safe, and that nothing and nobody was harming them. At the same time, he was also looking after the general welfare and the administration of the people, and things were hunky dory in his kingdom. Everything was perfect as Raghu was growing up. Then finally, when Raghu seemed a little grown up, he was now like 17. At that point, the king told his queen, "Sudakshina, I feel that I have done whatever is required of me as a king. There have been a number of duties assigned to me as a prince and as a king, and I think I have fulfilled them all to the best of my capability. And now I think that Raghu is old enough and that he is smart enough, and we can actually hand over the kingdom to him. And then I can go to the forest and spend the rest of my days meditating on God. I think the time has come. Raghu is now old enough to handle this responsibility. So what I want to do is that I want to get him married and do his coronation ceremony simultaneously. What do you think? The queen was delighted and she said, "Yes, let's arrange for his marriage. That's a very good idea." And so the king said, "Fine, we'll get him married and then we'll go to the forest. Because, my dear Sudakshina, without Shravan, Manan, and Nidhidhyasan, life is not good." The queen asked, "What do you mean, my lord?" And the king said, "My dear, Shravan means listening to God's glories. Whenever we hear about the Lord's glories, we feel very happy. Whenever somebody is doing a katha about God, some kirtan, we enjoy listening about God. It lightens our heart. It's good. But then we are not supposed to just listen and forget the story and forget about it. We are supposed to then sit quietly by ourselves in solitude and meditate on the inner meaning of what we have heard. So listening is Shravan. Manan is meditating on the inner quality, the inner meaning of the words that we heard. And then after that, Nidhidhyasan is putting that in practice. What we have heard, what we have understood and meditated upon, then the time comes to put all that into practice. So let's go and do that in the forest. And the queen gladly agreed. So very soon Raghu's marriage ceremony was arranged and his coronation was done at the same time. And then a very happy and contented King Dilip, along with his wife, went to the forest willingly and spent the rest of his days remembering God and being immersed in the self. So this is the first story in the ancestors of Rama, in the Kings of Ayodhya. And this was the story of Dilip and Sudakshina, how they ruled, and how they had a son named Raghu. Now to come to the second part of the story. The second part of the story is about the king Raghu, whom his father Dilip had made a king at a very young age. Raghu was more than capable of guarding Ayodhya, of looking after his country, because his father had instilled all the good principles in him, and he was walking in the footsteps of his father and grandfather. Raghu always made sure of two things: one, the prosperity and welfare of his subjects, and second, righteousness, that everyone must earn money righteously. Nobody should commit any wrong. There should not be any wrongdoing. Raghu also made sure that the Vedas were chanted in all the villages and that the scholars, they were reading the Vedas, they were doing the chanting, they were chanting the mantras also. And so there was this brilliant energy in all of Ayodhya, in every village, because the people were pious, the people were good, and with so much Veda chanting and mantra chanting, there was a good energy everywhere. The rains were always on time and in proper quantity, never less, never too much, and the harvest was good. The crops were always plentiful. The people had more than enough. Raghu had also made sure he had told his ministers never to burden his people with taxes. He didn't want that for his people. He said, "My subjects are my family. I am supposed to look after them the way I would look after my own child. That is what is the duty of a king." And so he told his ministers, "I never want to hear of any extortion of any subject of mine. Nobody will be extorted, not even one paisa, against their will. Let the farmers and the businessmen, let them all work, let them all enjoy the produce of their hard work. Whatever they can spare, they can give it willingly in the royal treasury. We will not collect taxes as such." And this was what surprised the people and pleased them so much, that there were no taxes, there were no extortion. Instead, whenever they had something surplus, some amount put by which they did need, then people would come and willingly donate it in the royal treasury. And that money would be used, spent on people's welfare once again. That was how it worked, and Raghu's treasury was never empty. It seemed like God himself smiled on Ayodhya and at King Raghu. Now, one day in Raghu's court, there came a student hermit. This student hermit, he was named Kotsu. Kotsu had just finished his education at the ashram of Vartantu, and his guru Vartantu had asked him for a guru dakshina. Now these gurus, they kept the children with them from a very young age, from the age of 5 onwards. These children, they went and lived with their guru till the age of 25. After that, they could leave the guru and then they could start their family life. But till that time, the guru was responsible for their upbringing, and the guru looked after all their needs, feeding them, educating them, teaching them all the life skills. All the time, never taking a penny from these students. It didn't matter if a student was rich or if he was poor, if he was the son of a king or if he was the son of a poor Brahmin. It didn't matter. All the students were treated alike by the Guru, and they all lived in the same humble conditions, thus learning a lot about life. But when the education was finished and it was time for the student to leave, at that time he would ask his Guru what Guru Dakshina he required. And the Guru could say anything, anything that he wanted. Now, this was not to punish the students, but this was rather a test of the students' character. What had they learned with the Guru all these years? Were they really up to standing up there on their own 2 feet in the world and work righteously towards a life which was filled with the basis of dharma, to do your duty righteously, to be a good person? All these things the gurus tested whenever they asked for their Guru Dakshina. They were basically testing the character of the student, the strength that was there in the student. So Varatantu asked Kotsu to give him a huge amount of money. It was really a very huge amount. Kotsu protested that he did not have that kind of money. How could he give it? And the Guru said, arrange it anyhow. But I want money, only that money which has been earned righteously and which can be spared. This money should not be extorted from anybody. This money cannot be taken from anyone against their will. Nobody should be hurt and sad that somebody, has taken so much money from them. So that is the kind of money I want. That which has been earned righteously and that which can be given happily, spared happily. That money I want, so go around and find out. So Kotsu went to a number of courts. In the beginning, when he would go and he would ask the king, Sir, I want some money to give as my Guru Dakshina to my Guru, the kings would immediately agree, because who would, deny a Brahmin? Who would deny a hermit a little amount of money? It was quite all right. But when Kotsu told them exactly how much money he wanted, then the kings would be alarmed because it would be a huge amount. However, they still agreed to give it to them. And then Kotsu would ask them the question, can you spare it from your treasury? Is it all right with you? And the kings would say, don't worry, sir, you take this money. We will impose some more taxes on our public and then we will take the money from them. Our subjects will pay the money back to us. Do not worry, you take this. But at this, Kotsu would refuse the money. Then he would say he cannot take it because he can only take the money which can be spared happily and for which nobody else would have to pay any price. So, like this, Kotsu was wandering from court to court, not knowing what to do and where he would get the money, till he came to the court of Ayodhya. In the kingdom of Ayodhya, in the court of Raghu, he finally found that he had the answer to his problem. Raghu very happily agreed to give him that huge amount of money. Kotsu asked him, I am surprised, sir. Can you really spare all this money? And Raghu said, yes, I can, because all this money has been given to me by my subjects willingly. It has not been extorted from them, it has not been taxed. So it's perfectly all right. Again, Kotsu wanted to know, are you going to charge your subjects and ask them to pay it again, what they have given? And the king said, I never do that. They do that willingly. Whenever they have surplus, they will come and deposit in the royal treasury. So have no fear, student hermit. You can take this money and give it to your guru. So Kotsu very happily took this money, which was untainted by blood and sorrow, and he gave it to his guru, who accepted it happily. Now, with this story, Raghu's fame rose sky high. Everyone got to hear about the king of Ayodhya, who had so much money in his treasury, which his subjects paid willingly, that he never had to tax them, he never had to extort them, he never had to punish them, he never had to squeeze a single penny out of anybody, that his people were very happy. Now, Raghu was the kind who was very nice with the nice people, and he was not so nice with those who were not good. He also protected his borders like his father, and whenever any enemy incursions would be there inside his country, first he would try to talk nicely, to find a diplomatic way to ward off any fight. But if that wouldn't work, then he wouldn't say no to a fight which would end in his enemies losing the battle. So with Sam, Dam, Dand, Bhed, as they said, following all these four principles, Raghu ruled very well, looking after his country, looking after his people, and he was shining like a diamond with all his virtues. In time, Raghu also got a son. His son was as brilliant as a diamond, better than his father and grandfather, and he was named Aj. Now, when Aj grew up, Prince Aj, Raghu arranged for his marriage. And for him, again they found a very beautiful princess. This beautiful princess was Princess Indumati from the kingdom of Magad. She was the sister of King Bhojraj. Raghu arranged their marriage, and then after his marriage, he also arranged for the coronation of his son. And like his father and grandfather, Raghu also went off in the forest to live the rest of his life remembering God and being immersed in the self. So this was the second story. The first story had been about Dilip and Sudakshina and how they got that son of theirs, Raghu. And the second story was about the noble king Raghu, in whose kingdom people were so happy that they paid taxes willingly. Now to come to the third story. The third story is about Aj and Indumati. Prince Aj and Indumati, after his coronation, he became King Aj, and he walked in the footsteps of his father and grandfather. He didn't need to do much because they had already done whatever needed to be done. The kingdom was secure, the people were happy, there was welfare and prosperity. And Raghu had also asked his son the same thing that his father and grandfather had before him asked their sons, to always look after the people's welfare and prosperity, and to make sure that there was righteousness in the people and in the kingdom. That these were the two things that were most important. They were very dear to the kings of Ayodhya. And Aj also followed this. Anyways, he was very much in love with his wife. Aj loved his wife Indumati so much, he was simply obsessed with her. He could not get enough of spending time with her. He always wanted to be with her. And he loved the people around him as if they were extensions of Indumati. He loved everyone because he saw Indumati everywhere. That was the extent of his love for her. He was completely bowled over by her. She was very charming, beautiful, and intelligent, and it was like they were made for each other. They were such a couple, Aj and Indumati, and they were blissfully happy. The royal couple, they spent a very long time in the nature retreats. They didn't like spending their time inside the Raj Mahal. They preferred instead to go out in the lap of nature. They climbed the hills, the mountains, the valleys, the rivers, the snow-capped mountains. All these attracted them so much. Far away from their palace, the king and queen would roam and would be blissfully happy together, alone in the lap of nature. Everything was going on fine, and in due time, Queen Indumati gave birth to a wonderful little son. This son was so attractive. When he was born, people were surprised. How can a child have so much charm and so much effulgence on his face? The child was always blissful, very happy. It seemed like he was being fed on bliss rather than milk, and he seemed to spread the bliss to those around him. And this child was named Dasharath. Again, this name was given by Guru Vashisht. Aj and Indumati were now completely happy. They felt that they could not ask for anything better. They really had it all. They were the king and queen, their subjects were happy, the kingdom was safe, they were young, and now they also had a son. Sorry. Life could not get any better than this. Dasharath was also growing up happily in the palace. His parents still preferred to spend most of their time going out in nature retreats. In the hills and valleys, they spent most of their time alone together. And like this, time continued. Then one day, King Aj and his queen Indumati were again walking in the beautiful valleys, in the snow-capped mountains. And there, beneath the shade of a tree, they sat down, and they were still happily chatting with each other and just absorbed, happy in each other's company, when suddenly there was a gust of wind. And this gust of wind was so strong that they just looked up surprised, because with the gust of wind there came a scent, a fragrance so heavenly, so divine. They had never ever smelt such a fragrance before. They were most surprised. What divine fragrance could this be? Now, while they were still smelling the fragrance and wondering about it, they suddenly heard celestial music. The celestial music seemed to be coming up from above the sky in the clouds, and Aj and Indumati wondered what could it be? Who was playing this music, and why was this fragrance coming? And the king and queen, they just looked around, and suddenly they saw Naradji up in the sky. He was playing his veena as he was going. The king and queen looked at him. The queen looked at Naradji intently, and suddenly there was another gust of wind. And with that gust of wind, the flower that Naradji was wearing in his hair, the flower fell down on Queen Indumati. The fragrance was because of that divine flower, and as soon as the flower fell on Indumati, she fell down as if struck with lightning, instead of being struck by a flower. The king could not believe his eyes. Till a second ago his queen was standing there, looking up at the sky, and suddenly a flower falls on her, and she falls down as if she is struck by lightning. She was unconscious. Aj took her pulse and he tried to shake her, but he found that she was lifeless. There was no life in the body. She had given up her body. He could not believe it, that his beautiful wife was dead. Just like that, in a second. Now his grief was so intense he could not believe that his beautiful life with his beloved wife was over. And he wailed loudly, and he was so much in grief that the earth quaked, the trees stood still, the birds were silent. It was like an ominous silence in the forest. As the king wailed, Narad Muni also heard the king crying down in the forest, and he looked. Then he came down. Now King Aj was a very revered king, and Narad Muni also knew him. And so he tried to console the king and said, "O king, what is the use of crying like this over the mortal remains of a body? Birth and death are not in the jiva's hands. Once a soul is born, that birth is not in your hand and the death is not in your hand. So why cry so? You have to accept this final reality. You are such a scholarly person. You are wise. Why should you give in to grief like this?" But the king could not be consoled by any of the Muni's words. All he could see was that his beloved wife was dead, and he was not going to accept it. Then finally Naradji told him, "Indumati was far too young to die. It was not her time to go, but still she has died, and I think you deserve to know the reason. Why this happened?" The king sobbed and said, "Please tell me, Naradji, why did God do this to me? What have I done? Why did he take my Indumati away from me?" So then Naradji explained, "O king, listen to me carefully. A long time ago, there was a sage named Trinbindu. He was an ascetic, and he was doing his tapas, he was doing his penance by the riverside. And his penance was so strong, and he continued with it without any distractions. He was completely involved in it, that Indra wanted to test him. So Indra, the king Indra in Amravati, in Devlok, he wanted to test the ascetic Trinbindu, and so he did what he usually does. He sent an apsara. he sent a beautiful girl named Harini to go and distract the Muni out of his penance and lead him into the world of sensualism. And so Harini tried all her wiles. She was extraordinarily beautiful, skillful, capable, and talented. She tried everything that she knew to distract the Muni, but he still sat with his eyes closed, resisting all her attempts. But she still continued. She could have given up and she could have accepted defeat, but that she didn't want to do because she was very proud of her beauty and her youth. She thought nobody could resist her. And so she continued. At that, the Rishi Tridbindu became very angry. He opened his eyes and he told her calmly, "You don't look like an ordinary girl. You look like you are an Apsara. Maybe that's why you are so arrogant. Because you are so young and beautiful, you think you can get away with anything? Do you know how hard it is to live a human life? To live on this earth as a human being and try to achieve what you want to do. It is also difficult to focus your attention and single mindedly pursue that thought and continue with it. And all this time you're trying to distract me? Why? I think you need to be punished for this. Your arrogance is too much. And so I punish you that from now on you will not live in the Swarglok. You will come down to this earth like all of us live, and you will also take birth in the human race. That is your punishment. Probably then you will understand what it is like to be a human being and the hardships that we have to face. Now Harini was scared and she cried and she sobbed and she held on to the Rishi's feet and said, "Oh, please don't do that. I cannot live on earth. I cannot live away from Devlok. Please don't make me lose my place in Swarg. I really am sorry. I am so sorry. I did all I did as an order from the king himself, my king. I was not doing it out of my own volition." At that the sage softened. And then he said, "I understand what you mean, but now that I have already said this, I can't take my words back. But I can tell you this, that the day a flower from heaven falls upon you, falls on your head, that day you will be released from your life in bondage on earth, and you can go back to Devalok." And that the Apsara Harini had to accept. There was no getting away from it. And so, because of that, O king, that Apsara Harini, she took birth in Magad as the princess Indumati. Your wife is the Apsara Harini who came down to earth for some time as per the curse that she had to endure. And today, when I was walking up in the clouds, and because of this gust of wind, the flower that I was wearing, when it fell on her forehead, in an instant, Harini achieved her release, and Indumati gave up this mortal body which dropped dead while she ascended to Devlok. And that is why your wife has been taken away from you in such a young age. It is no fault of yours. The king could not be consoled, but he was very sad to hear this story from the sage. Then, after consoling the king some more, Narad Muni went on his way. Aj, with a very heavy heart, he performed his wife's last rites, and then after that he went very sadly back to Ayodhya, all alone by himself. He did not think of marrying again. He did not think of taking a second queen. He was miserable without Indumati, because he had given his heart to her, and he could not bear to be apart from her. But there was his kingdom which needed to be looked after. There was his son, and so he did that. But Dashrath was already growing up very fast, and in a very short time, Aj felt that Dashrath was ready, more than ready, to take on the duties of the king. And he felt that the kingdom will not suffer with Dashrath at the helm of affairs. And so Aj handed over his crown and his throne to his son, did the coronation, and after that he left his kingdom. He had done all that needed to be done for his people, and from now on it would be Dashrath's turn to look after the people of Ayodhya the way his forefathers had done. Aj did not go in the forest and immerse himself in God like his father and grandfathers before them. Instead, he went to the Saryu River because his mind was still on his beautiful dead wife, whom he could not live without. and so he decided to give up his life by gradually stopping the intake of food. This is known as anshan. This is a vow which is taken by people when they want to end their life. They just stop taking sustenance, take in no nutrition, and just sit quietly and wait for this body to drop. And that is what he did. He did anshan by the banks of the river Saryu. And slowly life started ebbing away from him, which he didn't mind because he just wanted to be with his wife. He didn't want to live alone without her. After some days, Dashrath heard the news that his father had left his mortal coil, and so he went there and performed the last rites of his father as befits a king. And after that, now it was Dashrath's turn to look after the people of Ayodhya to the best of his ability, and he did that because his fame and his intellect and his power was shining like the rising rays of the sun. They illumine every quarter of the sky. Like that, Dashrath's fame, it started rising to each and every country beyond the borders of Ayodhya. So these were the three stories that I told you today of the forefathers of Rama. The first was about Dilip and Sudakshina. The second was about King Raghu. And the third was about King Aj and Indumati. I hope you liked these stories. And if you did like them, please like, share and subscribe to my channel. Sai Ram.